Sarah Thompson was the kind of woman you'd spot a mile away in any Brisbane suburb. 38, sun-kissed skin, practical blonde bob that hadn't seen a hairdresser in 6 months, and the permanent look of someone who just remembered she still had to pick up milk on the way home. She drove a battered silver Corolla with a cracked windscreen, wore thongs to the shops even when it was chilly, and kept the pantry stocked with 2-minute noodles for the nights when footy training ran late and Mark was too knackered to cook. Mark was her opposite in the best way. Big, broad-shouldered bloke who'd played rugby league for South Slogan till a dodgy knee ended the dream. Now he worked as a sparky, wiring up new housing estates out at Ripley, coming home smelling of solder and sweat. 15 years married, 2 kids, Jake, 8, obsessed with anything with wheels, and Mia, 6, who collected every shiny rock she found and named them after Disney princesses. They lived in a red brick house on a quiet street in 8 Mile Plains, the sort of place where the neighbors wave when you mow the nature strip and everyone knows whose dog keeps escaping. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Saturday mornings meant footy for Jake, ballet for Mia, and if they were lucky, a quick coffee at the local cafe before the chaos kicked in again. Sarah loved Mark fiercely, but after a decade and a half, the spark had dulled to a steady glow. They still laughed at the same dumb jokes, still held hands when they walked the dog, but the wild nights out had been replaced by Netflix and a shared packet of Tim Tams. She told herself it was normal. Everyone said marriage was like that, you grow comfortable. Still, sometimes she caught herself staring at Mark across the kitchen table, wondering when they'd last really talked about anything deeper than school lunches or the leaking tap. That particular Saturday was one of those grey, muggy Brisbane days when the sky can't decide whether to rain or just sweat. Sarah had dragged the whole family into the city for the Queen Street Mall markets. "Come on, it'll be fun," she'd said, ignoring Mark's groan about traffic and parking. The kids were excited. Jake wanted a new Matchbox car, Mia was after glittery fairy wings. Mark just wanted a decent flat white and maybe a sausage sizzle. The mall was packed. Buskers everywhere, didgeridoo players, break dancers, a bloke juggling chainsaws for tips. Sarah weaved through the crowd, 1 kid on each hand, Mark trailing behind with the pram they still used for Mia's shopping bags. Then she saw him, the old violinist. He stood alone near the fountain, grey beard down to his chest, clothes worn thin, a battered violin case open at his feet. His bow moved slowly across the strings, pulling out a haunting, slow tune that cut through the chatter like a knife. Most people hurried past, tossing in a 5-cent piece if they felt generous. The case looked pitifully empty. Sarah paused. Something about the man tugged at her, maybe the way his eyes stayed closed while he played, or the way his shoulders sagged when the song ended and no one clapped. She fished in her purse, found a shiny $2 coin, the last one she had, and dropped it into the case. It landed with a clear, bright clink. The old man's eyes snapped open. He looked straight at her, not at the coin, not at the kids, just at her. "You," he said in a thick, gravelly accent that sounded like it came from somewhere cold and far away. "You alone in 3 months gave coin to me. Kind heart." Sarah smiled, a bit embarrassed. "Just a couple of bucks, mate. Beautiful playing." He didn't smile back. Instead he leaned forward, voice dropping so only she could hear. "Tomorrow, do not get in car with husband." The words landed like a slap. Mark, standing a few meters away buying fairy floss, laughed out loud. "Bloody hell, love, he's got the gift of the gab, eh?" He slung an arm around her shoulders. "Come on, let's keep moving." Sarah forced a laugh too, but her stomach had twisted into a knot. She glanced back once as they walked away. The old man was still watching her, bow resting on the strings, eyes unblinking. The crowd swallowed them up, but those words stayed stuck in her head like a song she couldn't shake. That night, lying in bed listening to Mark snore, Sarah stared at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles. It was nothing, she told herself. Just an old busker trying to spook people for extra coins. Coincidence? Superstition? Yet every time she closed her eyes, she heard that low warning again, and the shiny $2 coin glinting in the empty case. Tomorrow, they were all supposed to pile into the ute and head down to the Gold Coast for a family day out. Mark had already packed the esky, the kids were buzzing about the beach. Sarah rolled over, pulled the doona tight, and tried to convince herself it was just another ordinary Saturday ahead. But deep down, in the quiet part of her heart she rarely listened to, something felt different. Something had shifted, and she couldn't quite shake the feeling that tomorrow was no longer ordinary at all. That night, Sarah barely slept. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the old Queenslander settling. Mark was out cold beside her, one thick arm flung across the pillow, snoring in that deep, familiar rhythm that usually made her feel safe. Tonight it just sounded loud, like the world was trying to drown out the violinist's words echoing in her skull. "Do not get in car with husband." She kept replaying the moment, the clink of the $2 coin, the old man's piercing eyes, the way his accent wrapped around each syllable like it carried weight from another life. It was ridiculous. She wasn't some gullible teenager who believed in fortune tellers at sideshows. She was a grown woman with a mortgage, school fees, and a half-finished load of washing still in the machine. Yet every time she closed her eyes, she saw the empty violin case, the rain starting to speckle the footpath, and those words hanging in the air like smoke. At 2:17 a.m. she gave up, slipped out of bed, and padded barefoot to the kitchen. The clock on the microwave glowed green. She made herself a cup of Milo, hands wrapped around the mug for warmth even though the night wasn't cold. From the kitchen window she could see the Holden ute parked under the carport, gleaming faintly under the streetlight. Mark had washed it that afternoon, proud as punch because they were heading to the Gold Coast in the morning. Esky packed with cold drinks and sangers, beach umbrellas strapped to the roof racks, kids' boogie boards in the tray. A proper family day out, first one in months. Sarah stared at the ute until the Milo went cold. She thought about ringing her mum in Toowoomba, but it was too late. She thought about texting Lisa, but what would she even say? "Hey, some random busker reckons tomorrow's a bad day to drive with Mark." Lisa would laugh, tell her to stop watching those true crime docos on Netflix. By 5 a.m. the sky was starting to lighten, that soft grey before the sun hits. The kids would be up soon, bouncing with excitement. Mark had promised Jake he could sit in the front on the way home if he behaved. Mia had already chosen her playlist, some god-awful Wiggles throwbacks mixed with Taylor Swift. Sarah's stomach churned. When Mark finally stirred at 6:30, he rolled over, gave her a sleepy grin, and pulled her close for a cuddle. "You right, love. You're tense as a brick." She forced a smile. "Yeah, just didn't sleep well. Bit of a headache coming on." He kissed her forehead. "Panadol and a coffee'll fix it. Come on, we've got a beach to smash." Breakfast was the usual chaos. Wheat Bix spilled on the table, Jake arguing with Mia over the last strawberry yogurt, Mark yelling from the shower that someone had used all the hot water again. Sarah moved through it on autopilot, packing sunscreen, hats, towels, spare clothes. Every time she glanced at the ute through the laundry window, her chest tightened. By 8 o'clock they were ready to load up. Mark had the engine running, AC blasting to cool the cab. Jake was already buckled in the back, kicking the seat in excitement. Mia was singing "Baby Shark" at the top of her lungs while Mark laughed and joined in. Sarah stood on the driveway in her sunnies and thongs, beach bag over her shoulder, keys in hand. "You coming, babe?" Mark called, leaning out the window. "We'll hit Macca's at Beanley for brekkie burgers if we leave now." She opened her mouth to say yes. The word was right there. Instead, something inside her snapped shut like a trap. I don't think I can," she heard herself say. Her voice sounded small, far away. Mark frowned. "What do you mean? You sick?" "Yeah, migraine. Came on bad. I'll just stay home. You mob go without me." The kids whined immediately. "Knew 'em. You promised." Mark killed the engine and climbed out, concern creasing his face. He put a hand to her forehead. "You don't feel hot. You sure? We can delay an hour, see if it passes." Sarah shook her head, tears pricking unexpectedly. "No, you go. I'll be useless if I come, probably spew in the car. Take heaps of photos, yeah." Mark looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. "All right, love. Ring me if you need anything. I'll bring you back a pineapple fritter from Currumbin." He kissed her, quick, worried, then climbed back in. The kids were still grumbling, but Mark turned the music up and promised ice creams if they cheered up. Sarah stood in the driveway waving as the ute backed out, indicator blinking, Mark giving her one last wave through the window. The tail lights disappeared around the corner. The street fell quiet except for a lone magpie warbling in the jacaranda tree. Sarah walked inside, closed the door, and slid down it until she was sitting on the tiles. Her heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. She grabbed her phone and rang Lisa, voice shaking. "Mate, I think I've lost the plot. Some old busker yesterday told me not to get in the car with Mark today. And I didn't. They've gone without me." Lisa was silent a beat, then, "Bloody hell, Sar. You feeling alright?" "No," Sarah whispered. "I feel like I'm going mad." Lisa promised to come over later with chocolate and wine. Sarah hung up, crawled onto the couch still in her beach clothes, and stared at the ceiling. The house felt too big, too empty. She kept the TV off, couldn't bear the noise, and waited, jumping every time a car drove past. By 11 she'd cleaned the kitchen twice, folded washing that didn't need folding, anything to keep her hands busy. Her phone stayed silent. No texts from Mark saying they'd arrived safe. She told herself the reception was patchy on the motorway. At noon she made a cup of tea she didn't drink. At 1 o'clock, the home phone rang. She knew before she picked it up. The police never ring with good news. The police officer's voice was gentle, but the words hit Sarah like a fist to the chest. Pacific Motorway, multi-vehicle collision, wet conditions, I'm very sorry, Mrs. Thompson. Your husband and children were pronounced at the scene. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered onto the tiles. For a moment the kitchen spun, the fridge humming, the afternoon sun slanting through the blinds, the untouched cup of tea gone cold on the bench. Then the scream came, raw and animal, tearing out of her until her throat burned. She collapsed to the floor, knees banging hard, curling into herself as if she could fold the pain away. Neighbors heard. Old Mrs. Kowalski from next door was first, letting herself in with the spare key they'd swapped years ago. She found Sarah rocking on the linoleum, face streaked with tears and snot, gasping, no, 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 over and over. More people came, the young couple across the road, the dad from down the street who'd coached Jake's footy team. Someone rang Lisa, someone else made calls to family. By evening the house was full of hushed voices and the smell of instant coffee no one drank. Police liaison officers sat at the kitchen table explaining procedures in soft, careful sentences. Sarah barely heard them. She kept seeing Mark's last wave from the ute window, Jake's excited grin in the back seat, Mia clutching her stuffed unicorn. All gone in a heartbeat because a truckie hydroplaned on a rainy stretch near Logan. The news spread faster than the police could contain it. By 7 o'clock Channel 9 was outside with cameras, a reporter doing a live cross. Tragic family wipeout on the Pacific Motorway this afternoon, a Brisbane father and his 2 young children killed instantly when their vehicle was crushed by a B-double. They showed file footage of the motorway, rain-slicked asphalt, emergency lights flashing. Then, somehow, a photo of Mark and the kids at last year's Ekka, all fairy floss and smiles. Social media exploded. #ThompsonFamily trending within hours. Hundreds of posts, old footy mates sharing memories of Mark, mums from Mia's kindy class posting crying emojis and broken hearts. GoFundMe pages popped up overnight. Flowers started arriving before dawn the next day, piling up on the front verge until the footpath disappeared under cellophane and ribbons. The Courier Mail ran at front page, dad and kids killed in horror smash, mum stayed home with migraine. The word miracle crept in by the second edition. Talkback radio went feral, callers ringing in tears, others furious about road conditions, truck driver fatigue laws, the bloody weather. Sarah heard none of it. She moved through the days in a fog of Valium and sleeplessness, identifying bodies she could barely look at, choosing tiny coffins that no parent should ever have to choose. Guilt gnawed at her constantly. If she'd gone with them, maybe she could have said something, done something. Or maybe she'd be dead too and someone else would be arranging 4 funerals. She replayed the violinist's warning until the words lost meaning. How could an old busker possibly know? Was it God? Fate? Dumb luck? She hated the thought that her survival might be some cosmic gift, because the price had been everything she loved. 3 weeks later, on a drizzly Thursday that felt too much like the day it happened, Sarah found herself back in the city. She hadn't planned it, just got on the train with no destination until she was walking the Queen Street Mall again. The markets were quieter midweek, but there he was, same spot by the fountain, grey beard, battered violin case open and near empty. He was playing something slow and mournful, eyes closed. Sarah stood listening until he finished, then stepped forward. Her voice cracked when she spoke. You knew. You bloody knew. The old man lowered his bow. Those sharp eyes found hers again, softer this time, full of something like sorrow. I see shadows, he said quietly. Dark clouds over some people. Over him, over little ones. Not over you. You gave coin, only one in long months. Kindness, it mark you different. Spirits whisper through strings. I only pass message. Sarah's tears fell hot onto the pavement. Why them? Why not me too? He shook his head. Not for me to know. Only to warn. She wanted to scream at him, hit him, thank him, all at once. Instead she reached into her pocket, pulled out every coin she had, and dropped them into his case. They clinked like rain. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not sure who she was apologizing to. The violinist placed a weathered hand on her arm for a moment. "Kind heart," he repeated. It hurt now, but it live on. Sarah walked away numb, the tune he started playing next following her all the way to the train station, something almost hopeful this time, rising above the city noise. Weeks turned to months. Grief didn't lift, but it changed shape. Sarah started talking, first to a counselor, then to journalists who wouldn't leave her alone. A current affair flew her to Sydney for an interview. The headline wrote itself, "Mystic Busker saves Brisbane mum from family tragedy." Half the country called it a miracle. The other half called it coincidence, or worse, a grieving woman grasping at straws. Sarah didn't care what they called it. She only knew she was still breathing, and Mark, Jake and Mia weren't. The outrage that followed, over road safety, over media intrusion, over strangers judging her survival, became fuel. She threw herself into campaigns, speaking at schools, lobbying politicians for better wet weather signage on the motorway. Some nights she still heard that violin in her dreams. And every Anzac Day weekend, when the rain threatened, she'd drive into the city and leave a $2 coin in an old man's case. He never said much anymore, just nodded, eyes knowing. "Kind heart," he'd murmur. "Lives on." The story broke wide open on a humid Monday evening in February, 6 months after the crash. A current affair led with it, dramatic music, slow motion footage of the motorway wreckage, then Sarah's pale face on camera, voice trembling as she recounted the violinist's warning. "Mystic Busker saves Brisbane mum from family horror," screamed the Chiron. They even tracked down the old man, blurred his face at his request, and got a shaky clip of him playing that same haunting tune by the fountain. Overnight, Sarah went from grieving widow to national phenomenon. The backlash was instant and brutal. Sunrise invited experts to debate whether it was divine intervention or pure coincidence. A psychologist from Sydney called it survivor's guilt manifesting as magical thinking. Talkback lines lit up with callers branding Sarah an attention seeker, accusing her of exploiting her family's deaths for 15 minutes of fame. "If the Busker's so psychic," one angry punter snarled, "why didn't he ring the cops and stop the truckie?" Trolls flooded her newly created Facebook memorial page with venom. "Lucky you, hey. Migraine saved your ass while your kids copped it." She had to shut comments off. On the flip side, strangers sent teddy bears, letters, even cash. Church groups declared her touched by God. A spiritualist shop in West End started selling Sarah's Guardian coin, a $2 piece on a ribbon. Tabloids ran side-by-side photos, the crumpled ute and Sarah dropping money in the violin case, claiming proof. The old Busker's spot became a tourist attraction, his case overflowed daily. People left flowers, candles, notes begging for warnings of their own. Sarah hated every second of it. Reporters camped on her lawn until police moved them on. Paparazzi snapped her buying milk at Coles in trackies and unwashed hair. She stopped answering the door. Lisa moved in for a month just to cook meals and keep the world out. Nights were the worst, lying in the too-big bed, replaying interviews she'd regretted giving, wondering if speaking out had dishonored Mark's memory. But something shifted when a journalist asked the wrong question on live TV, "Do you feel guilty for surviving?" Sarah, exhausted and raw, snapped, "Guilty, every bloody day. But if me talking means one more family checks the weather before piling kids in the car, or one more truckie pulls over when he's tired, then I'll keep talking till I'm hoarse." That clip went viral. The outrage flipped. Suddenly the conversation wasn't about mysticism anymore, it was road safety. Mums shared stories of near misses on wet motorways. Truckies admitted pushing hours to make deadlines. Politicians, smelling votes, promised inquiries. Sarah found herself in Canberra, sitting opposite the Transport Minister, handing over a petition with 180,000 signatures calling for mandatory wet weather speed reductions and better fatigue monitoring. She started the Thompson Family Road Safety Foundation with insurance money and donations. Schools invited her to speak, not about the Busker, but about checking tires, leaving earlier, never driving angry or exhausted. She told Jake's footy mates how their coach always made them buckle up properly. Told Mia's kindy class how seatbelts saved some kids but not hers, because the impact was just too big. She cried every time, but kept going. Years slipped by. The media circus faded, though every anniversary brought a fresh round of articles. Sarah moved to a smaller house nearer the bay, planted a jacaranda in the backyard for the kids. She never remarried, couldn't imagine it, but she built a life. Volunteered it says, fostered rescue dogs, became the auntie who turned up to every niece and nephew's birthday with too many presents. Every few months she'd catch the train into the city. The violinist was always there, older now, beard whiter, fingers stiffer in winter. His case stayed full, the story had made him a quiet legend, but Sarah still dropped in a shiny $2 coin, same as that first day. He'd stop playing, nod slowly. Kind heart, he'd say, voice thinner but eyes still sharp. Still lives on. One December evening, 10 years after the crash, Sarah lingered longer than usual. Rain threatened again, same muggy summer feel. She asked the question she'd never dared before. Do you still see the shadows? He considered her for a long moment, then lifted his bow and drew a single, clear note that hung in the humid air. Sometimes, he said, but yours gone long ago. Sarah smiled through tears, pressed an extra coin into his hand, and walked away. The city lights blurred as she headed home, not to an empty house anymore, but to one filled with photos, memories, and a quiet certainty that surviving wasn't luck or magic. It was a responsibility. And somewhere behind her, the violin started up again, carrying that same haunting melody into the Brisbane night. Kind hearts, it seemed to say, don't just survive. They change things.